we've got a fill down challenge for you this week because I thought we hadn't done a fill down challenge in a while, and I think it's a good skill to remember how to do. And so let's take a look at it. So our data set that we're looking at, we have a record ID, we have our employee, what work level they are, and then different stages that they go through throughout their employment. So for example, when they do their application, interview, when they get a promotion, so that work level updates, but it doesn't fill down across the additional rows. So that's what we want to tackle for these two fields. Okay, so we'll start off with the employee. We want to fill that down. So we'll add in a clean step and we'll just keep the employee and the record ID, which we need renamed to be employee ID. And we filter out those null rows. Okay, so we just have the rows that have the actual employee name on them. And then we do a join where we do the record ID greater than or equal to the employee ID. And you can see this creates this kind of like staircase. So for all those who are record ID less than 9, then they will only be joined to employee ID 1. So they will all just be joined to employee Andrea, which is what we want to happen. So from 8 downwards, they'll all just get Andrea, but then from 9 to 14, they will get Bobby and Andrea joined on when they only actually want Bobby. So we've got some additional filtering to do, and then if we see for rows 16, 15, 16, 17, they'll get all 3 employees joined onto them. So a little bit of extra filtering needed, but we're nearly there basically. So we just want to create a fixed level of detail calculation. So for each of the record IDs, we want to take the maximum employee ID. So it would ignore, say, Andrea when we want it to be Bobby. And then that will give us our numbers there. And we just need to then do a filter, which we take a look at that and see that it's employee ID match, which is that level of detail calculation equals employee ID. And then we just remove some unnecessary fields there. So we're kind of back to where we want to be. Okay, so we can see that our employee ID has now been filled down, which looks much better. So now we need to do exactly the same premise for our work level. So in an additional clean step, we remove the additional fields. We just keep the record ID and the work level. We rename the record ID to be work level ID. And then we do this join where we have the record ID greater than or equal to the work level ID. And we again get these stepped look to it. Again, we do our fixed level of detail to say for each of our record IDs, so we group by the record ID, then we do the max work level ID. And then we do our filtering so that we get work level ID match equals to work level ID. And then we're left with all of our work levels filled down. Although look at what's happened to our record IDs, they are now very mixed up. And it's difficult to actually tell if this has worked the way we want it to. So how can we sort these record IDs again in a order that we want it to? Well, first of all, we're just going to deal with these two -1s after employee and work level. So in a new clean step, we're going to the rename fields icon. And then that brings up this interface. So we're doing replacing text, that -1 with nothing, and it renames our fields, which I really like using that. And I'll just go back to the profile pane view so that we can then do our new record ID that we can introduce. So all that we're going to do is we're going to go to our date field and we're going to go and create a calculated field rank. And I'll show you the ranking that we're doing. So we've removed our original record ID and we're going to actually have our employee first and then our date. So just adding our employee there as well, in both of them in ascending order, so that for all of Andrea's rows, then they get ordered by the date, and that will be our record ID. And then it'll go on to Bobby, and then it'll go on to Chloe. Okay, and then that resorts the order down here, and in our output step, we can see that it is going from 1 to 17 again. So that's just purely for visual to check that our filling down has worked for work level, and it has the way we wanted it to. So that's great. So hopefully you enjoyed this challenge, and thanks very much for watching.